nice to be here with all of you, to see your beautiful faces. So those of you who are new, we welcome you. Welcome from my heart, and we welcome you into this Sangha. So I hope you find something good here. So this week, I'd like to speak a little bit about our inquiry question. And it has to do with embracing suffering, embracing that which scares you. So one of the great things that suffering does is it destabilizes your egoic identity. Not many people wake up when they are having the time of their life. Most of us tend to wake up when we're deeply suffering, when we're confused, when we are exhausted, when we're at, the end of our rope. Because when we're at the end of our rope, we lose faith in the ego. We see, this illusion of mind, of control, of identity, it's not going to solve the problem here. It's not going to help me to wake up. It's not going to give me what I want. And so I'll say this, one more time. Suffering destabilizes our egoic self, pushes you to the brink of feeling like I am not in control. I'm not in control. When we come to this realization, I'm not in control, we become humble, we become open. Our walls and our defenses fall away. And so the question for inquiry this week is, what happens when I embrace suffering? What happens when I embrace suffering? So internally, to your sense of self, what happens when you embrace suffering? And so we could ask the question, in a different way. What happens when I follow my desires? What happens when I give myself full permission to distract constantly? And what happens? You just get more stuck in ego. Last night I began to watch a documentary, and it's about social media. Maybe somebody can help me out with the title of it. It's pretty popular right now. It's on Netflix, but anyways, they interviewed the head of all these big tech companies, and they interviewed the fella who created the Infinity Scroll. And I assume that's the piece of technology that just lets you just scroll, say on Instagram or on Facebook, maybe on Twitter, infinitely. So you can infinitely distract yourself. And they were speaking in this movie about, how much pain and confusion they see, these creators of technology, social media platforms. They see how much pain and confusion and division their algorithms and their technology has created for us. I'm not terribly old. I get called an old man a couple times a week, but I've been through a fair amount of elections in my lifetime, and I can say this is the worst. I shouldn't say one of the worst. It's the worst I've ever seen. It's the amount of division, the amount of hatred, the amount of attacking each other that's happening here in the United States. It's ridiculous. It's beyond crazy. And so instead of, hunkering down in your desire mind or your distracted mind, you know, flow, getting in the flow, the dream state of the infinity scroll. What if you turned around and looked directly at what is causing you pain? What's causing you suffering? What's causing you heartache? See, this is the work of Christ. This is the work of the Bodhisattva. Is you turn and you directly look at pain. And this is how you become free in an abiding way. The ego will tell you or delude you through its teaching, its spell, that the truth is right around the corner. What you want is right around the corner. Something good is right around the corner. So just keep chasing. Keep chasing. But how many of us are willing to embrace our pain, to drop through it, and see that true freedom is here, right here within us, true goodness, true innocence, deathlessness, eternal life arises when we embrace that which we fear. The main reason being is that the ego is basically a fight or flight response. So when you do the opposite of fight or flight, you break the matrix. You see through the game. You see through the illusion. You see, oh, there's something here that's beyond suffering, beyond feeling. Something here that is awake and aware and indestructible. And so I encourage you to play with this question. What happens when I embrace suffering? Because suffering destabilizes the egoic self. It destabilizes it. When you're out of control, that's when you're ripe to awaken. When you're deeply in control, holding on tightly, have your life all zipped up, all your ducks in a row, probably not so likely to awaken. Because the ego feels so good, so sure of itself when things are going your way. And it's important to realize that, when the ego does become destabilized, it may feel like death, but it is simply the death of the one who controls. Death of the one who controls. It's not the death of your innocence. It's not the death of your goodness. It's not the death of awareness. But when the ego is destabilized, basically, the one who's proficient at controlling, at holding everything together, when that one becomes destabilized, you wake up and you realize, oh, life is still happening. I'm still alive. I'm awake. I'm aware. Despite the controlling egoic nature. Despite it. So we're letting go of the divide itself and stepping into the unified self. This is the work of spiritual awakening. Letting go of division. It's the death of division, the death of righteousness, the death of being a Democrat or a Republican. the death of your political views, the death of your religious views. I can remember when I woke up, it was the worst time of my life. The worst time of my life. I laughed because I realized, oh, this awakening did not happen through my great efforts at meditation, at all the retreats, I had gone on. That's not why I woke up. I woke up because I saw through my ego. I saw that I could not control the trajectory of my life. I could not control my children, my ex-wife, her new boyfriend. I could not control what was happening to me, around me. And boy, is that a relief. Boy, is that a relief. It's a great relief. I don't want to control anybody. So anyways, it's nice to sit here with y'all. I have a couple questions here from email. Uh, I see brave Richard has a question for us. And I also welcome questions from anyone else. Of course, if you do have a question, just see if it can be short and clear. If you send me an email, it's good if your question is short and clear. Sometimes people send me questions that are all over the place, and they want to tell me the whole life story. And those are more appropriate for like an individual session with me. So anyways, Richard, are you here? Let's see.
Yeah, I can unmute myself. You made
Okay,
it pop.
there you are. Good to see you, Richard.
Hi, Greg. Good to see everyone. And hello, Facebook Sangha as well. So Greg, a little more of a pretty specific question today, I would say. So so call the Divine Mother in, through, into the earth, and when the Divine Mother moves into the earth, right? And when let's just break this down really finely though. Like in a non-dual sense, the Divine Mother already is the earth, right? So I'm looking for, like, is the Divine Mother waking up to herself, just like awareness wakes up to itself in a
Yeah,
human being, as in
exactly.
an that is what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. That
And even more so, Richard. So, so so Richard basically, for those of you who didn't understand the question there, um, it's a question about practice and about this practice of invoking the presence of the Divine Mother to come down through your consciousness and flow all the way through your body into the earth. And then the Divine Mother in the earth is waking up. And so let's speak about it. Let's unpack it a little bit. So Aurobindo realized this great paradox. He went and basically he met his first spiritual teacher, knocked on the door, basically said hello, and then woke up fully. And woke up in a non-dual sense. And it was brilliant. It was beautiful. Like Ramana Maharshi had a very similar experience of just laying down, asking some inquiry questions, and then, in a sense, just waking up there. And the thing that Aurobindo realized, and he was one of the first individuals in history to realize this, was he realized, oh, I am awake. My consciousness is awake. Like my mind and my emotional nature, I'm free of those. I'm free of my body. But then Aurobindo looked out at the world, and at that time it was probably during World War One, and realized, oh, World War One didn't stop. Countless men were dying in the trenches. Countless families were being bombed and gassed and destroyed. And then, it went on into World War II, maybe a couple decades later. And Aurobindo saw this as a problem. Aurobindo also saw that He lived in this great country of India that was just dotted with sages, enlightened beings. And so all his fellow, countrymen, just the people of his country, just struggling from poverty. And so Aurobindo was the first one who said, I don't want to wake up just individually myself. I'm inviting the collective consciousness of humanity to wake up so that it becomes a cultural thing. And I want to be clear here, not a cultural thing like that's taught in school, but more of a species thing, that we're born into it. So at some point, here on planet Earth, at least in Western society, there was this thing called the Enlightenment. And it wasn't a spiritual enlightenment. It was basically when, people woke up out of the dark ages. Now, Westerners are pretty arrogant because we think that we're the ones that, had the first enlightenment. Of course, the ancient Indians and the, Tibetans, had their own enlightenment before the Westerners did. But, the age of reason, where you kind of grow out of an archaic way of being, hunter-gatherer society, archaic society, you're growing into, a society based in reason and law and order, logic, philosophy, gave birth to, political systems instead of kings. And so if you look, like we're at the top of the age of reason, we're at the top of our, technological advancements. Seems like technology is destroying us. It's destroying us. A little joke from last week for those of you who were here. When the aliens came and visited the kids in Zimbabwe or whatever, their message to the children was, "Hey, your technology is killing you. It's like you're reasoning. You're thinking you're so smart. It's like we're ready to kill each other now more than ever." It's like, and so Aurobindo just saw this. He said, "What's changed? I woke up. What has changed? Something's changed for me, and that's wonderful." But he saw that as very egocentric, actually. I'm free, while the rest of my brothers and sisters, the rest of humanity suffers. So Aurobindo, he was also, a philosopher, a scientist, incredibly educated. And he was one of the first ones to see that God was also evolution. So in non-dual terms, God is the absolute. So God is in me, God is in you, God is in the earth, God is in the soil, God is already fully here. And so we could be, have a little bit of false, we just have a little bit of foolishness and say, well, why wake up? What do we need to wake up for? But that's not really the truth. That's BS. That humanity's still suffering. And so Aurobindo said, God is the absolute that can be realized in the individual. What if the absolute was realized in humanity? What if it was realized in humanity? What if it was realized in the earth itself? So Aurobindo's great mission was to invite this world to transform into a heaven realm, literally. And so it's connecting to evolution in a non-dual way, where you see that yes, God is the absolute, but God is also giving birth into form. And can we cooperate with evolution in an awakened way? Can we invite evolution to happen through us? And St. Francis had this prayer, basically, Lord, make me a vessel for thy peace. And my prayer is, make me a conduit, Lord, for thy peace. And so it's the same kind of thing. It's inviting the transformation to happen through you. Through you. And if you look at, I'll give a very silly example. When I was a kid, I loved riding dirt bikes. My older brother had a dirt bike, and If you're a little kid and you're growing up in some cornfields in Ohio or Kentucky or wherever, um, having a dirt bike's a lot of fun. It's just like freedom. And when I was a kid, there was this fellow called Evil Knievel, and he had this, dirt bike, and he made a big ramp, and he would jump over, I don't know what it was, let's say 10 cars, and he did these stunts, and he pushed the limits of what we knew was possible for a human being. When I was a high school teacher, one of my students uh, was like he was a professional snowboarder and motocross guy. Uh, Greg something, I can't remember his last name, but he was one of my students, and I live in a town with like a lot of extreme sports stars. And he told me one day he jumped his house on his dirt bike. I was like, my God, he jumped your house. I didn't believe him. And, he pulled up, like his, back before cell phone video cameras, but like a video camera, and just showed me. I was like, my God, like that's crazy. That's like what the people on, I don't know what it's called, Red Bull, it's like that kind of stuff, sports. I was like, that's amazing. But see, Evil Knievel was one of these guys. He came, he kind of broke the collective psyche of what was possible. He moved evolution forward, say in the realm of extreme sports. Tony Hawk did the same thing, with the skateboard. And so, Aurobindo, he had the same kind of mindset. He said, I want to see if I can break the sound barrier. So we're not just, trying to get to nirvana like the Buddha taught and get the heck off planet Earth while the rest of our brothers and sisters and fellow human beings are suffering. What if we transform this world literally? So Aurobindo thought, how can I consciously open, surrender my body like Christ did on the cross? Surrender my mind, surrender my emotional nature, surrender the very matter, the fabric of my being. And it's already happening. It's already happening. Like it's much easier to wake up now than it was 50 years ago. It is. So many people are waking up. Normal people like you and I. And so what Aurobindo said was he taught that there is a seed of the absolute in everything. In everything. There's a seed of the absolute in everything. And I'll give a again, this would just be, kind of a shooting from the hip example. If you look at anger, most people think of anger as like completely unspiritual. But when you sit with anger and inquire into anger, just ask, what is this emotion, anger? What's the truth of it? Is there a seed of divinity in it? And you see, it has a seed of power in it. It has the seed of power. Power. And so, Aurobindo said, what if we opened it away, where we invited the Divine Mother to the energy of evolution, to the energy of God giving birth into matter, to come down into us and to wake up more fully, more quickly, more swiftly than going at the normal pace of evolution. If we go at the normal pace of evolution, we will probably destroy ourselves, in the next, say 100, 150 years. I mean, humanity is on a really dangerous course with global warming and divisiveness and just pandemics and global warming alone, the rate we're destroying the planet. So Aurobindo said, let's invite the Divine Mother to come down through us and transform our mind from the inside out. From the inside out. And not only our mind, but our emotional nature, our body, and then why not the earth itself? How deep can this transformation go? And so that's, one of the great practices here as you open and you call forth the Divine Mother. And if any of you are new to this, you open the crown and you just become receptive. And see if you can begin to feel this grace pouring down into you. I can feel it now as I speak about it. Crown lighting up, coming into the third eye, making the mind quite blank and empty, coming down through the throat chakra, the heart, through the belly, the pelvis, the legs, the feet, and then flowing down into the earth. The beautiful thing about when you call this forth, we humans, just because we're kind of childlike, we think of God as, say, up in the sky, like heaven is in the sky, like with the stars. And it's kind of true. It's also, of course, not true. God is everywhere. But as you're inviting this grace to flow down through you, and you feel yourself as one with the earth, your consciousness pouring into the earth, you begin to notice the matter of the earth waking up, and you'll notice that light in the earth feels much different. The absolute in the earth, the quality of it, feels much different than the absolute of heaven. And just to play with this and just see if what I'm saying is true. You don't have to believe a word I'm saying. If you come to the Wednesday night meditation, if you're really open now, you can feel it. This energy waking up. And this is really a question of resonance of, do you care? Do you want to wake up individually just for your own sake? Or do you have brothers and sisters and other fellow human beings and pets and animals and friends and trees that you're radically in love with, that you care about? So, I've said this many times. I'm so tired of this election here in the United States. Donald Trump is not going to save us when he wins Tuesday night. Joe Biden is not going to save us when he wins Tuesday night. Like, none of these, I'm going to use this word, clowns, are going to save us. They're just human beings, just two old, crusty white men. They're not going to save us. They will not save us. Washington, D.C. will not save us. Washington, D.C. will probably destroy us, along with Moscow and, Beijing or wherever. We need to wake up from deep within. The planet needs to wake up. We're at a tipping point. And so it's a path that's very similar to a bodhisattva path. The bodhisattva path is kind of, looking out at your brothers and sisters, fellow human beings on the path and saying, I'm inviting us to wake up together. Aurobindo takes it one step forward and is inviting all of matter to wake up. To wake up. Matter itself to wake up. So that in the future, human beings isn't an animal body, like an angel housed in an animal body. Imagine an angel housed in a light body. And so this is obviously an evolutionary world. And so it's just saying, how about we cooperate with evolution? How about we cooperate so we're not killing each other? So that factory farming is not a normal way of living. So war and violence is not a normal way to live. Political division and hating each other, it's not a normal way to live. Can we imagine a world where, there's no politics? Could we imagine this type of world? And again, it's far off in the future, yes. But, are we going to be the individuals that start to lay these bricks? Or do you want to just surrender to the division that's on Facebook, that's on Twitter? You want to surrender to animal drives or, philosophical drives of righteousness? I'm right, you're wrong. Do we want to surrender to that? We've tried that. We've tried Marxism, tried socialism, we've tried, communism, we've tried capitalism, we've tried this and that. We tried being Republicans and Democrats, conservative and liberal, and it has not changed. We've just become more sophisticated at our fighting. At our fighting. And so when you start to open, even if this sounds, like New Age, if you start to open and just feel into what's here, you begin to notice the transformative nature of this practice. And it all starts through you letting go of the steering wheel, letting go of the controller, and just acknowledging, like, I'm a human being. I've tried it all. I realized it didn't work. So I lift up the steering wheel, I give it to God. The imaginary steering wheel that we all have. And you give it to God. You say, God, you show me. You show me. And keep in mind, like, you can't make these flows happen. Like, so this isn't something made up in the ego. It's not something we're fantasizing about. It's something you're opening and you're receiving. You're saying, I'm going to trust in that which is truly intelligent. I'm going to trust in the intelligence and the evolutionary force of the Creator. I'm going to surrender my life like Christ on the cross, like a bodhisattva, and see if I can cooperate with something greater. You'll notice right away, you'll feel empty and free, this light flowing through you. You'll feel much more different. A great experiment would be, get on Twitter for like 45 minutes and, start reading all this politically divisive tweets, and then put that down. Let yourself go blank and open to this, that which is greater. See, see which one opens your heart. See which one feels true and which one feels like a fantasy. Which one feels like a fantasy. So anyways, a beautiful question, Richard. How about Taylor? Can you say hi, Taylor?
Hey, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Yeah, it's good to see you, Taylor.
Yeah, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were answering that last question, you said something about the Buddha and Nirvana, and I remember back when I was into Theravadan Buddhism, there were these things called the 4 stages of enlightenment, and you were a stream enterer, and then you know, and it I guess my question is around that path of non-existence versus whatever whatever it is that you just explained with
Yeah.
Aurobindo. And
Yeah, they're both a path of non-existence. Like I said a moment ago, it's giving yourself permission to be empty. So Aurobindo started his journey with an empty mind. Like, he started from a place of freedom. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if this is just me making up ideas about it, but it almost seemed like there's like the end of incarnation and on the Buddhist path, and on this path, it's like seems like it's a more like engaged bodhisattva.
Yeah, no, so that's 100% true. What you're describing, Taylor.
Yeah.
So what you'll find in the world of spirituality um, is basically when you choose a lineage, when you choose a tradition, it's a doorway to a realm of the absolute. And I want to be clear here, a realm of the absolute. And so there's this idea that most schools have, that say Theravada Buddhism is the one doorway to the true absolute. Christianity? No, not really. And then of course Christians will say Christ consciousness is the one doorway to the absolute. Zen Buddhism, says this is the one doorway. The Tibetans say, Dzogchen is the one doorway. What Aurobindo said was, well, how about we open and let the intelligence of life show us what that doorway is. Show us. And so it's you saying, I'm going to open myself to the intelligence of God and see where God takes me. See where God takes me. Now, for those people who are interested in the path, say, of Aurobindo, there tends to be a socially conscious heart, a heart that cares not just about our own individual awakening, and again, wanting to get off the wheel of samsara for our own sake, so I don't have to ever incarnate again and never come back here on planet Earth. What Aurobindo was inviting was, what if we helped to change the nature of the world while we are here? While we are here. So it includes a full enlightenment, head, heart, gut enlightenment. And then beyond that, instead of just resting in our cave, staring at our navel, the old Buddhist joke, it's inviting the transformation to happen throughout your body, throughout your form, and to flow into the earth itself. And, the problem here is, many of us, we get a little too far ahead of ourselves. And we say, oh, I don't, I just want to wake up first. I can't take on the work of Aurobindo first because that's just a distraction. No, keep in mind, the work of waking up is the same. You have to let go of your allegiance with your thoughts, whether you're a good Buddhist or you're going to follow the teachings of Aurobindo or Christ, by the way. You have to let go of your allegiance with your thoughts. You have to let go of your allegiance with your emotions, the fight or flight response. And you have to surrender into something greater. And so, this is what we're inviting. This is what we're inviting on this path. And again, I'll say this for me personally. When I looked at Buddhism and just the teachings on nirvana, this idea that, I'll go into nirvana and I'll cease to incarnate, cease incarnating. One, it didn't make any sense to me. Life created us, dragged us through hell, and then the point of it is to get out of this world and never come back again. It's like, why? Like, why drag us through hell to begin with? Why? Human beings tend to be relational beings. I have deep care for each and every one of you. I have deep care for my children. I have deep care for this earth, for this planet. And for me, true freedom is surrendering in a sense, to endless service. Not, like an endless vacation in nirvana or just disappearing. In order to truly serve in a similar way as nirvana, you have to disappear. Like your ego has to disappear. Like when your ego when your ego disappears, for many of us, I won't say all of us, but for many of us, the natural response is, I just want to serve. Like services happen. It just tends to happen. You look around, great spiritual teachers, when they wake up, many of them do not go and hide in a cave or an ashram and meditate for 12 hours a day. Many of them, their heart wakes up and they serve constantly. Like if you ever see a great soul like Mata Amarita Nandamai, Amachi, a hugging saint. I mean, she's hugged, I don't know how many, like probably 30 million people or something crazy. She's one of the greatest humanitarians who's ever lived. So when you're free of ego, the great question is do I just want to disappear and dissolve into nothingness? Even if that was your path, the terrible thing is you wake up and then you have to live for the next 10, 20, 30 years of your life here on planet Earth. It's like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to stare at your navel that whole time? Just waiting for when the body dies so you can melt fully into nirvana? Or can you melt into freedom? And then when you do melt into freedom, does your heart not want to serve this world? And so again, it's a difference between what I'll say. This will be an odd comparison, but I'll say like the path of the monastic, which is say the path to nirvana. Just me, I'm gonna let go of everything and go wake up on my own. Or, the path of being unified with your fellow human beings, with all of life. And when life wakes up, it tends to live. It doesn't tend to not exist. And so anyways, was that at all helpful, Taylor?
Yeah, definitely. I think on a few levels there.
Yeah, and keep in mind, because I struggle with this question too. I thought I just want to wake up. I just want to wake up. I just want to wake up. It starts with waking up. Like the teachings of Aurobindo, they're advanced. They start with waking up. They start with waking up. And so anyways,
Thanks,
did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, just
okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, good to see you. Here's a question from Justina. Oh yeah, and someone corrected me. So the movie that I was speaking about was called The Social Dilemma. It's great. One of the beautiful things about this new movie on Netflix is it shows, in a sense, the dream world of social media and how that dream world is actively plugged into you and actively changing our behavior. One of the funny things I heard in the movie was, like one of the technologists in the movie said, the question in the morning is, do you check your cell phone before you get up and go take a pee? Or are you looking at it while you're peeing? And my little brother, he told me this funny story many years ago, just about this illusion that we all get sucked into this dream of social media. And my little brother, he was coming out to visit. He was in the Denver airport, and I'll say something a little crass here, but he was in the the men's restroom, and if you're a girl in a men's restroom, they have a wall of urinals, so a bunch of guys just standing there peeing, looking forward. He said a guy had a cheeseburger in his hand, like shoving it in his mouth, looking at his cell phone, while he was peeing. And so, like, that's how addicted we've become. And the beautiful thing about social media and the cell phone is like samsara has become like, it's become materialized, like clearly materialized in an iPhone or in, a computer screen or whatever. And then there's these gods of samsara, at Facebook and Twitter and wherever, Instagram, Pinterest, all these things. And they're literally messing with you. They're messing with your behavior. And again, it's like, great question. This is a question whether you're, Buddhist or into Sri Aurobindo, or again, the teaching's the same, is can you unplug from the story, the game, the trance of social media? Can you unplug? Like, I'm curious, like the people on Zoom I can see here, but the people on Facebook, like how many of you are with me and how many of you are infinity scrolling? That's one of the fun things they've done on Facebook, is you can have a little video of me down at the side and you can just be scrolling, and they do it on YouTube as well. And so it's like, am I here with what's happening now? Or do I have one foot here on the spiritual path and then another foot doing the infinity scroll? That should be like a dance move, the infinity scroll. It's like, how am I living? How am I living? If I'm doing the infinity scroll, can I stop and ask why? What is it I'm afraid of? What happens when you stop? What happens when you stop? When you stop, does fear come forward? Does anxiety come forward? And if so, can you embrace this? So when you stop and you embrace your suffering, can you wake up and melt into nirvana? Can you melt into nirvana, cessation, freedom? And once you've rested there, and that's become, let's say, semi-permanent in your consciousness, and you can ask, well, how do I want to respond to life? Do I just want to sit here on my couch and melt more and send out, light and love and peace from my being to the world? Or do I want to sit here and melt and open to these evolutionary flows and invite my own consciousness to be upgraded? Invite the consciousness of this world to be upgraded into something greater. Something greater. So anyways, let's see. I guess I missed a couple questions here. So I'll start from the beginning. It's from Kyle. Hi, Craig. My question tonight is about Tantra. What makes this path of Sri Aurobindo uniquely tantric? What makes Tantra unique from non-duality or Zen? What makes Tantra so powerful? Thanks. Yeah, that's a good question. So, Tantra is basically the willingness to face pain, confusion, sadness, heartache, desire, and to use it, say, as compost. And when, I'm a gardener, so when you have good compost, you tend to grow good fruits and veggies. You tend to grow good fruits and veggies. So let's break that down a little bit. So Tantra is the willingness to face darkness, to find the truth in the darkness, to bring light into the darkness. Tantra basically is the movement of evolution. The movement of evolution. I was really thinking about this infinity scroll thing. because people often, they speak to me about distraction a lot, a couple times a day. And I never really felt like distraction wasn't my thing. Like I never got, too terribly lost in distraction. So I just started to sit with this, to sit, excuse me, with distraction. And so when you sit with something, you're beginning to do tantra with it. So I sat with the demon of distraction. And I just noticed, like, what am I doing if I'm, say, scrolling on Instagram? Like, what am I doing if I'm just scrolling there? And so I felt into the truth of distraction. So I looked at distraction, and I stepped back, and I'm not labeling it as negative or positive or spiritual or not spiritual. So I step back in a non-judgmental way. So what's the truth of distraction? Oh, it's I'm looking. Oh, I'm seeking. I'm seeking. That's what I'm doing. So what's the truth of seeking? There's something within me that's wanting to wake up, to find something I'm passionate about. There's something that wants to come alive within me. So through distraction, it's like, you're scrolling, you're just looking for something to make me feel alive, to make me feel passionate, to make me feel connected. So see, this is doing tantra with distraction. And so, the question is what makes the path of Sri Aurobindo uniquely tantric? I have this problem, Kyle. Every path I look at, when I give myself to it fully, to completion, whether it's Zen Buddhism or the work of Aurobindo, for me personally, it all just becomes tantric. It all becomes tantric. It has to, because my question was always, how does the awakening become abiding? How does it become full and complete? I want to make sure no stone is left unturned. Now, Aurobindo is the most tantric because Aurobindo includes matter. Not many other paths include matter. They include, like Buddha mind, Buddha heart, Buddha strength. But the work of Aurobindo includes matter. But every path, like Christianity, incredibly tantric path. Zen Buddhism, you're sitting, you're meditating, you're breathing into, you're letting go of pain, suffering, confusion. That's Tantra. But if you do Zen Buddhism, in a real strict, confined way that only involves this one center, then it's not Tantra. So Tantra basically is a path of inclusivity. And again, I have the problem of everything I look at just becomes inclusive. I look at Donald Trump and I can find inclusivity there. I look at Joe Biden, I find inclusivity there. But that's just because my mind has become inclusive. I hope that makes sense. The big thing is, say like with Taylor's question and with Kyle's question is, sometimes we can get lost in, say, philosophical orientations, and it can seem like we're teaching that one path is better than another. What I'm inviting for you is to look at what's in your heart and follow what's in your heart. Like follow where your heart lights up. Follow where you have a connection. A connection. Like I love Zen Buddhism, but it's not so much in my heart. It's more I just gotta like the practice, I like the strictness of it. I have great respect for it, but my heart doesn't resonate, fully and completely with that. Just a little too dry for me personally. and the way it's taught is often exclusive, not inclusive. Same is true with most non-dual teachers. They teach in an exclusive way, which is silly. Here's a question from Justina. Hi, Craig. Despite my goal to be more spiritual and love everyone, it's quite a goal, Justina. I find myself hating Donald Trump. This is fun. We got to get him. I wish I was able to be higher and more noble than this, but I always find this hate arising when I hear about him. Do you have anything to say about overcoming hatred towards others, especially these most upsetting figures? Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'll just say this about politicians is politicians, they tend to be so divisive. They're so assured of themselves. They tend to say it's this way, this is the only way. And of course we hate that. Of course we hate it when someone's a fundamentalist, when someone's completely right wing or left wing, because it's not inclusive. It's not inclusive. So, I mean, that's one of the big things that Trump ran on was he's like, I'm not a politician. I hate politicians. I'm different. I'm different. And, so that same hatred in you that you have towards him, like, he has it towards other politicians. He doesn't like to put up with politicians. He doesn't like to play their games. And the big thing that I will say about whenever we have hatred towards an individual, and of course you have every right to disagree with his politics or anyone's politics, if you put all ideas aside, if you put behaviors aside, and just look from your heart to his heart, and just notice what you see there. If you look from your heart and look into his heart. If you look from your mind, you're going to look from your politics. Or if you look from your emotional heart at Donald Trump, your emotional heart with your righteousness and your political beliefs are going to see his righteousness and his political beliefs. But I encourage you to get in touch with the tenderness and the innocence of your heart and see his heart. See his heart. Does that help, Justina? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so this is a great practice for all of us, especially in the United States. In, I don't know, I think 3 days, we should have a new president or the same president, one or the other. And, we're at the height of political division right now. I think it's probably as bad as it was right before the Civil War. I saw this thing on the news where, like a Joe Biden bus was kind of coming into Austin, Texas, and a bunch of Trump people with just pickup trucks and Trump flags. It wasn't officially Trump campaign. It was just his followers kind of tried to run the Joe Biden bus off the road, or make it stop or make it miss its engagement. And from one perspective, it's hilarious. We're not going to let you go to your campaign rally, Joe Biden and company. From another perspective, it's like horrifying. And we're seeing this right now, just in our own lives, in our own towns. I met with a yoga teacher yesterday, and she told me if her father picks her up at the airport for Thanksgiving with a Trump sticker on his car, she's not getting in the car. She's going to go back home. It's like, wow, it's like there's just such division, such hatred among us. And, like I tell her, Can you look in your father's heart and see that he loves you? That's why he's picking you up at the airport. Can you give him the freedom to have his own political beliefs? And of course, can you, go cast your vote in our beautiful democracy on Tuesday if you haven't already? If you haven't already. And so it's good to remember also if you think Donald Trump stands for hatred and you hate him, we're adding to hate. It's kind of like judging the judge. If we want our country to heal, we have to do tantra with people on the other side of the political aisle. Like, that's how our country's going to heal. I grew up in a Republican family. I fully understand Republican politics. It makes perfect sense to me. I have completely liberal friends. I fully understand their politics. And me, I'm about as middle of the road as you can be. I'm a bleeding heart liberal, but also I just believe in, just some of the basic, politics of the Republican Party. Don't like a lot of regulation and things in the way and this and that. I'm a big fan of the environment, but that's me personally. We have to learn to speak to each other again, to listen without shouting, listen without tweeting, listen without telling people they're wrong or jumping online. And it doesn't heal. So this is a path of being a bodhisattva, of being a healer, meeting each other with love. Rioting or buying lots of guns or flexing our muscles will not heal our country. Listening and speaking and making friends with the enemy will. I'll say one last thing about this. The Gracie family, and they're a family from Brazil. They're the ones who, pretty much popularized and mastered the art of jiu-jitsu. And one of the Gracie boys, he's a jiu-jitsu black belt teacher. He posted something on my YouTube feed. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but he took on police reform because he trains military personnel and police officers. And like one of the first tenets of jiu-jitsu is like, hey, try to avoid a fight first. Try to smile, nod, and make friends, before you start punching someone. One of the things that he's doing is taking on police reform and trying to teach some of the skills of de-escalation. So instead of shooting the next black man you pull over, you're a police officer, how about you talk first? How about you speak? How about you learn to receive some training in de-escalation? And how about we learn to communicate to each other before we pull out our gun? And so, one side saying defund the police. The other side is saying, police put on your riot gear and go squash the riots. That's not going to heal. How about we retrain the police? How about we develop greater respect for the police? So it's this type of conversation that's going to heal. Through doing the hard work. The hard work. Instead of saying someone is good or bad, I hate you, you're the worst. But looking and listening, saying, what do they have to say? What do they have to say? What do they have to say? Here's a question from Wes. Hi, Craig. I'd love it if you could offer a prayer either now as you read this or at the end of the Satsang for the earth in the coming days and weeks. Yeah, Wes. It's funny. We must have been tuned in to the same God, Wes, because I had that idea. I was going to start tonight that way, but then I guess I got confused by myself. And so let's just take on Wes's desire here. And so you all can close your eyes and let's just invite a greater love for this planet, greater love for humanity, greater healing for the eco crisis that we're going through right now, greater healing for our oceans, that big, enormous, floating ball of trash out in the South Pacific. May we learn to respect this earth. May we learn to respect our ecosystem. May we learn to respect each other, love and support and listen to each other. May we learn to heal and be kind. May we open our hearts and be conduits of grace. May a great light shine into this world of darkness. Great light. Great light. And furthermore, I'm going to invite a great light to flow into our good friend Wes. And Wesley has a beautiful heart, a precious heart. He's had a tough run this last couple years, especially this last year. So may Wesley be blessed with the highest light, love, and freedom. We'll pray for this member of our Sangha. So thank you, Wesley. Thank you. Thank you. Here's something from Denny. Craig, I don't know who said it, but I'm reminded of wake up, grow up, show up. Yeah, I think that's Ken Wilber. Wake up, grow up, show up, something like that. Because again, it's like, it's an interesting thing, if all of a sudden we all become enlightened. It's kind of like eating a big, chocolate cake, being at your own birthday party, eating your big chocolate cake. And then if you don't show up, if you don't share the love, like you're just sitting there eating cake by yourself, which is delicious. But, if you have a compassionate heart, you're going to want to show up. It's just a natural thing that humans being, we care. We have these hearts. God gave us hearts that care. Here's a question from Jacob. Hi, Craig. Do the quality of our thoughts get upgraded the more we step into our true nature? They seem so silly. They eventually burn out, and I give them love also, but are always making up stories that would most likely never happen. Can you speak to our human egoic self meeting our divine self? Yeah. So this is where I'm going to bring forth some more teachings from Aurobindo. So Aurobindo notices, he said, you wake up, and when you first wake up, you just see your thoughts, and you see how silly they are. You see how crazy they are, how deluded they are. They're always making stories or self-fabricating. That's what the Buddha said. They're just like self-fabricating things. Grand stories, illusions, fantasies, whatever. As you begin to embrace them more with love and open into the strength and the strength in the belly, the hara, a couple things happen. Your thoughts actually get louder at first, but as you embrace them with love, they tend to heal and transform. And just a good example of this is if you can think back to your consciousness in middle school, so like when you're 10 through 13 years old, think about your thoughts, like how much thoughts you had about your hair, your hairdo, your jeans. I can remember like as a kid, I don't want to say I grew up poor, but we were like kind of say lower middle class. And I can remember just, my mom always went shopping for me. We always shopped the clearance rack, so like the cheapest blue jeans. I'd go to school and kids would make fun of me because it wasn't the right label or whatever. And it's just silly, like all those kind of thoughts we have about we're so self-conscious when we're, say, teenagers or adolescents. As you mature with age, it's very much like enlightenment. Your thoughts grow up, they become more mature. You don't care about those silly things anymore. You've kind of outgrown them and they burn out. And so enlightenment speeds this up so the mind becomes very empty. Very empty. And so, but there's this paradox though. It's kind of an irony that you'll notice in some great sages, their mind becomes empty, but then there's some things that hold on. And these things are, shadowy things that they tend to get in a lot of trouble with if it's made public. And so then the question becomes, can we embrace our shadow and start to really kind of uproot some of these old tendencies that aren't so supportive? And then from there, we can say rest in a blank state of cessation, or we can invite what Aurobindo is inviting, a greater mind to come forth to give birth in us. And this greater mind is not going to be creating fantasies and stories and illusions. A greater mind is like an intuitive mind where you're connected into the intelligence of God. And, if you've, like me, I'm real well studied with studying great sages, and I visited sages throughout India. One sage I met in India, this Swami, basically he just sat in a chair and he had a pile of dreadlocks like on the floor. His fingernails were like this long, like 2 feet long, all squirrely and wild looking. His body was shutting down. He had to have a catheter in just to pee because his body stopped working because he like stopped eating and didn't move from his chair. When I saw him, it was like 26 years since he'd been out of his chair, out of his seat. And so, I'm going to ask the Swami to forgive me, but we can kind of be like a dumb saint like that, who just goes into emptiness, kind of gives up on this world. And of course, I'm sure he's shining light in a bunch of dimensions, so I don't want you to take it too literally what I'm saying by dumb saint. But then there's other saints who are much more active. And so their mind is open to something greater is moving through them. And like Gandhi, something great was moving through Gandhi. Aurobindo tried to create, new school and new education and organic gardens and all these types of things. And that he invited at his ashram. Just a greater way of living, greater way of being. And so Jacob eventually, you have a choice. The mind can just become blank. We can just kind of drool on ourselves. I spent some time doing that myself, Or we can go blank and then just ask God, like, what's next? Like, is there something greater than just being empty and free? Can you show that to me, God? Can you use me? Can you flow through me? Can you speak through me, act through me, live through me, love through me? And again, that's a question for your heart. All right. Um, Here's a question from Hannah. Hi, Craig. How do we learn to speak our truth, especially when we feel we just want to say the right thing? Well, that's an interesting question. Uh, and Hannah put right in quotation marks. And so it's good to inquire into, where'd you get your idea of what the right thing is? You know, if I hang out with my super liberal Antifa friends, you know, how I get filled with, their right thing. And I can think that that's my right thing. If I hang out with my super conservative gun-toting rancher neighbors, I can get into their right thing. And so if you have an idea about what is right, can you step back and investigate this? Say, where did it come from? So if the rightness is in alignment with your heart, that's your truth. If the rightness is in alignment with, you know, something you read on Twitter, then I encourage you to investigate that. Does that belong to me? Do I actually agree? And so, Hannah, this is a question for your heart. Can you feel into your heart and ask what is true? The truth in your heart will always be simple, very simple. Truth in your mind will come with a dissertation, an argument. And so truth is always very simple, very simple. Okay, here's a question from Connor. Hi, Craig. I have a question about past lives. Let's see here. I feel like in past lives I was experienced some level of abuse, and I couldn't tell if this came forward. Let me see if I can read this a little bit more clearly. Yeah, forgive me here. Basically, the question is how do you discern if the pain that you're feeling that's coming forward is from this incarnation or previous incarnation? And the thing that I'll say is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You treat it the same. You meet it with love. So in order to heal, healing is a somatic thing. So healing requires that you embrace the tension, the sadness, the emotion, the feeling, the sensations in the body. You breathe through it. As you breathe through it, shaking, trembling, tears release, angst releases. A lot of us stall our healing through getting stuck on the story and the details. And when we focus on the story and the details, what we're actually doing unconsciously is we're kind of slowing down the healing process and trying to make sure that we're not overwhelmed by the emotions that are wanting to release. And so, the big thing is like we all have things, of course, that happened to us countless incarnations. We all died in all of our previous incarnations. So there's going to be some level of trauma. We lived in the dark ages. There's going to be some level of abuse, violence. I've been, in a lot of wars in my previous incarnations, a lot of incarnations as monks as well. But you just meet it the same. And so sometimes people get confused. Sometimes they feel like, oh, is this something from this incarnation? Maybe pre-verbally, because I can't find it where this one memory is coming from. Maybe it happened pre-verbally, like when I was just, 0 to 2 years old or something. But it doesn't matter. You just breathe into it. You meet it with love. You embrace it. And you don't have to get the details. Details don't heal. The breath is what heals. A courageous willingness to feel is what heals. There's many times when I'll just lay, say, in child's pose or supported Baddha Konasana, just feeling my heart, my belly, and tears will start rolling down my cheeks. Again, I don't know if it's something that happened to me pre-verbally, my older brother smothering me with a pillow, or um, you know, something that happened in the trenches of World War One. And so I'm just going to invite you to breathe into it, to feel into it, to open into it, and just see what comes. A great question. Here's a question. Um, this is a question about autism. And so this fellow writes in that he's probably autistic, and it seems like one aspect of autism is basically being in a body that almost perpetually has too much sensitivity and kundalini flowing through it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but stimming sounds basically the same as spontaneous mudras, mantras, even as kundalini awakening. And so for those of you who don't know, some people with autism, they do these repeated kind of pattern behaviors. It's like this, and they make kind of funny movements with their hands and this type of thing. And Aaron, I'm just going to say this. I'm going to disagree with you, or I'm going to say the question. I'm going to say the response a little bit differently than what you're describing it. So basically, Aaron's asking, is this stemming the same as having too much kundalini flowing through the body? Is there a difference? Yeah, there's a difference. So kundalini is this massive energy waking up, and it's flowing up your spine. And when it flows up your spine all at once, it can overwhelm the nervous system and create mudras and funny movements and the eyes rolling back and all this type of thing. And the source is God waking up in you. If you're having a neurological disorder associated with autism, that's root is autism. With autism, you're right, there's tremendous sensitivity, and it's possible that you're having what I call dual diagnosis. So autism with kundalini, with sensitivity, and then all these symptoms can mimic each other. But some people have seizures, and their hands get stuck like this, and it has nothing to do with kundalini. It has to do with something is off in their neurobiology. He goes on to ask us, are autistics and perhaps others with psychiatric disorders just people who don't know how to control their kundalini in socially acceptable ways? Sometimes, yeah, but more often than not, no. Most psychiatric disorders have their root in the psyche. It has nothing to do with kundalini or spiritual awakening. But I'll say this, if I visit a mental hospital, I would say, anywhere from like 3 to maybe 7 or 10%, maybe just 3 to 5% of those individuals who experience like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, schizoaffect disorder, psychosis, it's possible that say 3 or 5% of them, actually had a spiritual awakening, a kundalini awakening, and then were just misunderstood. They had, unhelpful guidance and probably like a dual diagnosis, mixed disorder in there with the spiritual awakening process. I've met with a lot of people who've had that. So like what you're describing, autism, Asperger's, schizoaffect disorder, bipolar disorder, in addition to kundalini awakening. And that just makes the whole thing messy and confusing. But the tendency in human beings is when we have an experience, it's easy to project our idea of what's happening onto the world, like our experience onto the world. And Donald Trump, I'm the one and only way. Like I projected onto the world, this is the right way. Everyone must join in. Everyone must see this. Joe Biden does the same thing. You and I do the same thing. We project our pain, our suffering, our confusion onto the world. We also project, our beautiful insights into the world, our spiritual experience into the world. I do this personally. Like I assume everyone is awake on planet Earth. Then I turn on the news and I see this. The world is not awake. It's a world in great suffering. So, anyways, let me just check one more time, make sure I got all the questions. Um, I think I did my part. So again, I'm going to remind everyone to sit with this question this week. What happens when I embrace suffering? What happens energetically, spiritually? What happens to the space of awareness when I embrace suffering, when I don't run from suffering, when I don't avoid suffering? What happens when I open my heart to life? If we're standing in a voting line, what happens when I embrace the people who are voting the opposite of me? What happens? So anyways, you all sit with this. Looks like someone else popped up here on the I missed. This is from Lisa. Hi, Craig. I've been experiencing an absence of anger or hatred in the midst of difficult situations. Just feel the need to love these beings. Is this part of the path or just being in negation? Personally, I feel it is a blessing from the divine. Thank you. Yeah, no, this is what happens. The more you wake up, you find that anger and hatred will fall away. And then you might walk a few steps further along and you might find some deep anger from your being start to wake up and you say, oh my God, what is this? And then we embrace that. And then that falls away too. And see, that's what this path is about. It's about embracing, embracing, embracing until the heart's doors are simply open and unity is just a way of being. But I've been surprised that, I can go into states of samadhi and completely blank and feel totally and utterly free. Then a year or two later, I can find, some massive chunk of ego come forward and say, oh, wow, look at all this anger, hatred, sadness, judgment, whatever, And at some point, it's just love, healing love, love shining into the darkness. So it sounds like, Lisa, you're on the right path. It's a blessing from the divine because your heart is opened and it's pure. And it's pure. So you keep walking forward into the light. So anyways, okay, hold on one more because someone else popped up. Oh, everyone's writing these questions at the very end here. Hi, Craig. I'm aware of part of me that smiles within me mischievously. Is this my shadow? I think it comes up when I'm being slightly dishonest with myself as a way to reveal that to me. I don't know. It's a little weird. Is this a Kundalini symptom? I wouldn't say it's a Kundalini symptom, Derek. I'd say that's a spiritually awakening symptom. Uh, as a parent, it's funny because I have a little girl in my house, and sometimes she lies to me, about like eating candy or something, and so she smiles mischievously, and I was like, I look at her and say, like, sweetie, I know what you're doing, so I see it. And so, yeah, no, it's good. The more you wake up, the more you're going to see all these little places inside, and it's your shadow. And keep in mind, it's good. It's good to smile because then then it can be lighthearted and you can embrace your shadow and meet it with love. Is it a Kundalini symptom? Yeah, sure, it could be. I mean, Kundalini pushes everything and brings it into the light. Spiritual awakening pushes everything forward, brings it into the light. Um, yeah, just, you're going to out yourself. And that's what happens. The more you wake up, you just find you're outing yourself throughout your day. So, anyways, so much love to each and every one of you. Thank you all for your donations, your support. Thanks for sticking in and sharing your hearts with me. Go out and vote. Change our world for the better. Vote in everything you do, not just on a silly ballot. Vote with your heart in everything you do. Be kind, be good. Share your light, your love with the world. Spend your money on good, healing things. You know, be the Christ here on planet Earth. So much love to all of you. We'll talk soon. Bye for now. Good night, everyone.